Good afternoon, my name's Kevin Graham and welcome to the A Celtic State of Mind Wednesday Bulletin. And as usual on a Wednesday, I'm joined by Colin Watt and Brian Dengan. Brian and Colin, how are you doing, lads?
Doing good, mate, doing good. Good to have you back.
I know I've been away for a couple of weeks. I was in Athens, they offered me a contract and ripped it up, so I'm back with my tail between my legs. So I have to prove myself to the boss of hour again, so I need to up my game and show that I'm going to come back into his philosophy.
ACSOM, is that who you were signing for?
Aye, ACSOM, aye. So I'm back, tail between my legs. We may as well start on transfers. We're in what is the silly season where everything just seems to be rumours, clickbait and stuff like that, But there seems to be some concrete evidence from some solid sources out there now that Celtic are close to signing a couple of players. Now, I'll only believe it until it's announced on TikTok, because that seems to be what the club does now. But the rumours are this morning that Fabrizio Romano, that Ireland journalist who works for Sky Sports, who was the first to break the Carl Starfelt story, has tweeted this morning that the deal is done and the player's heading to Celtic for a medical. The player's currently at Rubin Kazan. He's a Swedish international, and the bid is round about €5 million, or the deal is round about €5 million. Colin, what's your thoughts on that?
It's good to see that we're actually progressing with transfers instead of saying that we're getting close and it not really happening. It looks as if he's going for a medical in Moscow today, and the intention that he'll be involved in, I think it's the second leg of the tie. As long as he's registered, he'll not play in the first leg because of the quarantine situation, but he'll be able to play in the second leg, which is good. We've missed the boat for the first leg. I think we're all kind of accepting that's the stage now, but it's good to get them in. From what I've seen, and there's some great analytical analysis out there, especially from guys like Boys Analytics, who definitely look into all the sort of performance data that's out there. It suggests that he's someone that fits into Andrew's style of football. He likes the short, sharp pass and playing it out from the back, and he's very good in the air. And it's something that I think we've missed, is having that defender who can maybe pop up with 5 to 10 goals a season. I think we all thought that Shane Duffy might be that kind of character last year, and he did look as if that would be the case in the first couple of games. He scored a couple of goals. But when you're setting up and you get the amount of set pieces and the amount of corners that Celtic get, having that attacking threat that can come up from the back, that's something that could be a very important part of our arsenal going forward.
What do you think, Brian? I always like Celtic having a Swedish connection. It must just be my age. What's your thoughts if Carl Starfelt gets over the line?
My immediate thought is I'm going to have to just call him Starfelt, because every time I say Carl, I sound American. I can't quite remember that. So it's either Big Carl or Starfelt. But I think it's the signing we should be making. I've been, generally speaking, I'm quite positive about everything Celtic related, but I have been sort of complaining about some of the transfer targets. Like, I thought Urugidi, I didn't get the signing behind that. I hate the fact when we're linked to project players, when we've got a full squad of project players. So I'm glad they're actually going for someone with a bit of experience, because I think we just need another 2 or 3 of them to fit into that back line, and then I'll be a bit more optimistic moving forward. We'll be really interested to see who, as I say, because there's no registered players in time, who actually starts against Midtjylland. But I think it's the type of signing we should be going for. Experienced player, fits into the system. He's not a bad looking big fella as well, so he adds a bit of talent to the squad, which is nice. But I know, I feel pretty positive.
I mean, we have been linked to the names that we've been linked with, and I'll read some of them out. You've got Mario Vuskic, Sasha Boye, Brandon Soppy, Abada, and there seems to be a lot of project players in there. And you've already mentioned the project players there, Brian. Do you think this is just a legacy issue? I think this is just as like what could you say? Don Mackay's came into a new house. He's bought a new house. He wants to rip out the kitchen and put in a new kitchen, but he still needs somewhere to cook at this precise moment in time. So he can't rip everything else. So it's just a case of trying to get the best of the current setup. Do you think that's what we're actually seeing here? And we're maybe expecting far too much too soon?
I think so, mate. I think that one of the things we said about Ange starting was, in lieu of a decent scouting system, he was going to have to use the data that Celtic already had. He was never going to have time to start sending his own scouts to get information on players. So, given the fact that in recent years we've been trying to buy these guys really young, develop them, sell them on, it looked like that was the pool he was sort of fishing from. But it was exactly the pool we didn't need. So it's interesting where Starfelt came from, if he's been one of those guys that we've been after for a few years. And again, the only other worry for me is, when we talk about legacy, is we're notorious for taking so long to negotiate contracts and terms and sell-ons and fees, and it drags out. So you link to a player, and 2 months later you sign somebody else. It's madness. So I think there's a lot of legacy issues, but it's not unexpected given the fact that Don Mackay and Ange have been pretty clear that they're going to modernise it as they go. So the work's going to continue throughout the season. So I'm not happy about it, but it's kind of what I expect, to be honest.
Sorry, Colin. What do you think? Do you think they're seeing Europe as a bonus, the Champions League as a bonus, knowing full well of the issues that Ange is facing?
I do feel as if that is the case. I think they're looking at it as the 3 strikes at Europe this season. The fact that there is the 3 competitions that Celtic could potentially be involved in. And I think Champions League, even if you get through this round, even if you get through the next round, when you get to sort of playoff rounds, the teams that you're coming up against are quality sides. And even with a strong Celtic team, you would say that's a really, really difficult challenge for Celtic to get through that. So given the situation that they're in, I think they're just happy enough to be playing in some form of European competition this season, hoping that they'll get the fans back into the stadium and they'll make the money off the ticket sales for people that haven't been at the games for best part of 18 months coming back to see them. And I'm sure we'll touch on the idea that they've applied for 18,000 for the Michelin game and see how that goes. But there is early signs, I think, that the things that Dominic Mackay was talking about and the teams that he wanted to benchmark against going forward, we're starting to see that. And the one that sort of catches my eye there is Marko Viskovic, because it's been announced today that it looks as if Basel is one of the sides that are looking to put a bid in for him. Celtic's opening bid of €5 million was rejected, and is it Hajduk split. They're looking to hold out for a bit more money than that, and the teams that are interested is the likes of your Basels. So it does show that if that is the kind of format that we're trying to copy, then we are starting to look at similar type players, and that's the way it will probably go going forward. Now, Brian, I know you mentioned the idea about, well, the guy's not that experienced, but you will have to look at the sort of projects that we're signing, like guys like Boston Lowell, who looks to be coming in from Watford, someone who was the Academy Player of the Year down there. I know Lowell in, Lowell out, but I could see Kev making that connection right away. There is going to need to be a mix between the two there. And I think if you're going to spend the sort of 3-4 million, I'd rather it be on someone who, like Vuskovic, even if he comes in and doesn't have a good game, knowing that he's been linked with these other teams before, there will be interest in him. Not like the £2 million you spend on Bio and then you struggle to get them out the door. That sort of thing.
I think you're right about having a mix, but the problem we've got is we've not got a mix, we've just got loads of young players. We're not signing the mix. At the moment, we're signing boys at 19 as project players when we need experience. So you're right, in theory, that we should have a mix and develop the younger players for the future as they go and give them some game time and actually play the guys instead of sitting them on the bench. But at the same time, it's like getting into a boxing match with, pillars in your hands instead of gloves. You're immediately going in there and just hope you don't get belted badly by somebody and hope it's going to be all right by the end. I think that having a mix, we don't have a mix at the moment. It's a problem.
See, one of the things that we were kind of worried about, probably before the managerial announcement was made, was the idea of, well, the players that he brings in sets out how long he's actually going to be at the club. We were speaking about it when Eddie Howe was meant to be the man that was coming in. We were saying, well, if we spend this money on buying a director of football and we bring in a whole new coaching team and we buy, what happens in 2 or 3 years if these players move on? I think the fact that you're sitting looking at the kind of players that we're targeting suggests that if you get them playing the style of football that Ange wants them to play, and Ange is successful, he's someone that's comfortable in staying there for the long term. So there is a sort of balance between the short term and the long term. They seem to be sort of nailing down the long term with the targets that they're bringing in, and hopefully Starfelt's the start of the short term targets and the short term success.
Well, I'm going to come to a comment here. Maravchik25 says, all our Scandinavian and Eastern European lads get Celtic very quickly. And that's something I like these markets, especially like the Scandinavian market, because I do think they settle into Scottish football quite quickly. And do you think that's a market that we will be raiding quite often, Colin?
You would think so. I know it was something that we looked into when Ronnie Dyler was in charge, and some of the players that we looked to bring in from there, including Chris Ayer, who was, or Ajer, as was Ronnie Dyler's signing. We even looked to bring in Erling Haaland at 15. I mean, that type of player is obviously out there because you see them developing them. They're coming through the youth systems, they're coming through their international teams. But I think what really helps them is the mentality of the football that they play over there. It's tough, it's physical, they don't get a lot of time on the ball. And when they come to Scotland, it makes the transition that bit easier. You'll see a Michelin team that will come here next week who will play a very similar style of football to Celtic, who are physical on the ball, might not be the best technically gifted, but they'll give 100% from start to finish, and that's what we're going to have to match up to next week.
Definitely, when you have a look at the teams that have troubled us in playoff rounds, especially the Scandinavian teams, you've got Malmo, I'm trying to think off the top
Rosenborg.
of my head, but Malmo, Rosenborg, and even Copenhagen, they're all of the same sort of structure. You've got a lot of homegrown players, but then they've got 1 or 2 professionals who have been around the block, who have came. Especially, I think it was Malmo. They had the guy who they brought back from Southampton and stuff like that, who's a highest paid player by some distance, but they've got a core of homegrown players. And it's interesting when you're talking about Ball and teams like that as well. That's a model that we do need to follow because we are a small footballing nation. And even though we're a massive club worldwide, it's the league that we play in is the actual problem. What do you think, Brian? Do you think that's a decent model to try and follow if that's what we're trying to go and do?
I think so, yeah. I think it's been ambitiously realistic, isn't it? So you don't want to just settle for being sort of mid-table, sometimes in Europa League. You want to be ambitious, you're trying to get the last 16 in the Champions League again, but you also have to be realistic with that and adopt a model that works for an equally financed club. It's one of those things, and I think, going back to the point with the Scandinavian players, I think he's a spot on because I think it's a cultural thing as well with that, because I feel like they don't have the arrogance when they come, and they sort of work hard, and they sort of, as you said, they sort of, there's this, maybe I'm wrong, but they all seem to embrace the club there and embrace the culture and be part of it, as opposed to thinking about it as a stepping stone. And I think that Celtic have been trying to copy the Ajax model. That was the thing, but the problem sometimes with that is that we need to win all the time. So you don't have that breathing space that you filter the young players through, which goes back to that argument, I suppose, of if you've got young guys, you're going to play them in risk losing games and maybe saying, right, we've got these players in 2.5 years, these are going to be a brilliant team. Or do we need players that are going to be a great team this season? And that's always the case with Celtic, in it. The amount of players that sat on the bench and faded away because they can't get game time and they go somewhere else and thrive. So I think you're right. It's about mixing this, and I think as well, it's just about finding a structure and sticking to it, and actually saying, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is how we're doing it, and moving forward, as opposed to a sort of mishmash. The lack of clarity has been an issue as well.
See, on the idea of using the Ajax model, sorry, Kevin, Celtic were doing it, but they were doing it as like a light version of it. It was Ajax light. So they would sign a player for maybe £2-3 million, develop him, sell him on. Someone like Donny van de Beek, move for like £30-40 million, and they would go and invest half of that money on a player. They would spend upwards of 10, 15, 20 million on the next big player, develop him and sell him on. When Celtic done it, when we sold on guys like Moussa Dembele, when we sold on guys like Kieran Tierney, we would maybe only invest 10% of that. You look at Kieran Tierney as an example, £25 million out the door. Who do you bring in? £2 million on Greg Taylor. You're not going to have the same turnaround and get him up to that standard, because that is his level. This is as big a move as Greg Taylor's going to get. Whereas if you bring someone in, spend maybe £5-6 million, even a wee bit more, bring in the quality player, you're guaranteeing, hopefully, that you get into European football, but also that you get a better return on your value as well. So there was following the Ajax model, but it was following it to a very loose extent.
It's like, for a perfect example, Timothy Castagna, who was £7-8 million. That would have solved the fullback problem there and then, and you would have at least got that money back. Edouard, £9 million as well. We are going to get that money back. Whatever, we're maybe not going to make the profit that the accountants want us to make, but we will get that money back, and it has been worth that investment. I mean, we're now 5 months down the line, and David comes in on Periscope and says, they knew there was a rebuilding job since February and March. What's that, 5 months? Colin, why do you think we're still sitting here using the same process that we've used in the last, as me and Boise spoke about last night in Screamer Celica when we started listing some of the players that have arrived in transfer windows? We've been using this mismatch, horrible scouting network since 2000, and since the downsizing started with Gordon Stratton. We've been the same every transfer window. Why do you think that is? Why do you think the big bang hasn't happened?
Why would you change a winning formula, Kevin? It's worked so far. I don't think there is an answer that's immediately out there for that. I mean, there's been such a hit and miss success rate with the scouting network. And when I think back to the leaked transfer list that came out, the one that came out from Lennoxtown, and some of the players that were on that, there was some really good players, but we didn't ever seem to get them over the line. So I don't know if it's necessarily down to the scouting team not identifying good targets, or if it's down to us getting them over the line, or are we being unrealistic in the targets that we're aiming for. I think of some of the guys that was on that list, you're looking at guys like Reece James, who's a regular within the Chelsea side now. So Scott McTominay as well at Manchester United. Is there a balance to be found there between getting someone that we know can improve the team, what's within our budget, and what's unrealistic? They don't seem to have nailed that formula down. At the minute, it seems to be, we'll try and sign, and then if we run out of ideas, do those numbers on the speed dial.
No, that was that the other night there when we were linked with Lael Abada, and right away, as soon as you see an Israeli internationalist, the police song goes through your mind. A do, a da, as you see on speed dial. Now, again, on the face of it, he looks an exciting prospect. And I'm going to go to a comment here by Cara Gray, who's came in on Facebook. I don't think a player at 21 is a project player these days. Get Sorrell playing every week. Brian, you're talking about players being project at 19, 20, 21, but we've got to agree with Cara. I think they're only project players at Celtic because they haven't had first team games at that age. But when you look at the ones that were signing from European markets, they have had at least 50, 60 games at professional football level.
Well, it depends what you're looking at. Like Urukidi, I think, at 20 games. Get relegated, so I'm not sure it might be a false equivalency, but I think that you're right about the age 21. I think you need to be playing regularly. I think you need to be playing regularly at 19 if you're going to be a real big success, to be honest. And it's why I think that any good team, you have a spine of experience surrounded by youth, and guys like 17, 18 can come in and start playing, but you've got the option to drop them out because you've got that solid spine. And that's why it's nice to have a mix. That's why I'm sort of concerned about signing these, signing Urukidi. I didn't see the merit in that, to be honest, and he's got plenty of time to prove himself, and hopefully he's watching this, and if you prove me wrong, big man, I'll support you, but I just feel like, why spend the money when we've got Ian Murray, who I thought has been excellent pre-season, you get Big Helge, 17, we're going to give buy young guys in and give them game time. Just give the guys that are their game time. And if they're not good enough, then release them. I don't really. It seems contradictory to me, the approach. It's like Dembele, we've always said, why is Dembele not playing? Is it because we don't want to risk playing a young player? Well, if we don't want to risk playing, let him go. If he's not good enough at that age, he's not going to be good enough. So it's strange. We've got this weird habit of stockpiling players. We buy these players young to stockpiling for the future, but then we panic and then get loan signings in and then don't play them anyway. And then we release them or they sell them. So it's a very strange. I think they have to pick a lane, is essentially what I'm saying, and just make a decision either way. If we say, right, we're going to play some of these younger guys and take the risk that we're up to their own form and we might not be as successful immediately, but we will get there. Fine, stick with that, and that's the message. If it's the case that we're buying for the short term, stick with that. But this sort of half and half, it's not working, and it needs adjusted.
Sticking with what Brian says there, Colin, Kevin Mack comes in on YouTube and says, Ange says at the start he likes to build teams. Unfortunately, it's going to take time to get the right players. Now, that's true, but do you think the fact that we're focused on this youth at this precise moment in time is all down to Postecoglou?
I'm not 100% certain on that. I don't think guys like Urhoghide and Shaw were necessarily on Postecoglou's list of players. I mean, Shaw was signed before Postecoglou even arrived at the club. Urhoghide, there's a good chance looking at his contract situation. That's another one who we've been kind of following for a while. So you look at it, who's the kind of youth players that he's looked to bring in? Well, you've looked at Boston Law, who's one that looks to be kind of getting over the line. Joey Dawson, was that before his time as well? So the only other one that's out there is really Vuskovic, the 19-year-old, and probably Abada as well. Actually, he's 19 as well. So the targets that we're kind of seeing in like Starfelt, that's an experienced head. Even Abada's played a vast amount of games for his team over in Israel, so there is an experience there too. I think that the guys like Law, who's coming in, I think they're there to boost the Colts team. And the Colts team obviously going on to play in the Lowland League this season. And I think their games will be great to watch. And I'm sure some of them are on the Path to Paradise this year as well. Am I right? Is that right? Yeah.
That's right.
We have a fantastic youth setup at the club, but there is a high turnover every year. And we've seen some of the players that have actually played for us this pre-season, and you're going, are they really going to make that step up? Brian, you mentioned there Dane Murray. Dane Murray's not even a centre-half. He's a central midfielder who's moved back into centre-half to cover for this pre-season. That's how stretched we are in that position. So it's difficult to judge players on that. And it's difficult to judge the transfer policy on whether he's going to go for a younger type player or whether he's going to go for experience, because we've not really seen anything go over the line yet.
I mean, what I'll say, Brian, is Urhoghide, using Urhoghide as an example here. He was on nobody's radar. He was in any leaked lists. He wasn't rumoured and all of a sudden bang that he's been signed, right? You've got to think to yourself that Postecoglou's had the sign off on that signing. Even though he's been scouted before, you've got to think Postecoglou, who's now been here for about 4 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever it's been, if you're counting that he would have been working on quarantine, he would have had the sign off on that, on Urhoghide coming to Celtic. You would think that. Shaw's different. Shaw was signed in January, and the guy for Law for Watford as well was maybe slightly different. But even Law for Watford, I would think Postecoglou's had a look and went, yes, get him in the building. What do you think, Brian?
I think you're probably right, but I suppose the common factor in that is that they're either free or cheap. So he could have gave the okay for another 6 or 7 players, but we need to pay for them. So he met OK Starfelt and said, I want him. Maybe his first one. But because we're paying 5 million from him, it's taken a month. Whereas these other guys, they're cheap, they're free. So if he goes, I quite like the look of them, or quite like the look of them, possibly wanting that mix. But the difference is, it's whenever money's involved, we're taking too long to go over the line. Whereas with the 3 deals, essentially, or the 3 contracts or whatever, you can probably get them in and say, yeah, he's one for the future, get him in the Colts. So I say, I'm not against signing youth players. I just wish to sign some first players. given the fact when he's such desperate need for that. And it could be the case, I've got egg in my face next week and I've signed 5 players tomorrow. And I'll be high-fiving strangers and if that's the case, I'll be delighted to be wrong. My worry is, that's not going to happen. And I think that's where the concern is. And I think maybe that's why I'm maybe being harsh on guys like Urigide, because I feel like my anxiety is now, is this who he thinks is going to be a first team centre-half? I hope no. I think he probably is sending youth players to develop, and he's got a list of experienced targets. But given Celtic's history, where are they? Why are they win yet? And that's the worry.
Do you think Tommy McIntyre had any say in this as well, if they're coming straight into the Colts team, Kev?
Well, we don't actually know, I mean, Tommy McIntyre's just sort of quietly just slipped into being the manager of the Colts, where everybody sort of thought that there might have been a change there because they are going to be playing competitive football. And you would think so. But mind you, this Tommy again, it's difficult without knowing the structure. Like, Tommy McIntyre's a coach, Ange Postecoglou's a coach, and they'll maybe go, we could do a backup at right back, and they get presented with a list of players. And that's what happens in modern football. And for everybody that says, the manager doesn't sign players, no, gone are the days of managers travelling up and down countries in Ford Cortinas, watching every game under the sun. If they'll get presented with a list of players and they'll decide to send somebody they trust or somebody they want to go and watch these players over a set period of time, or they'll trust the system that's in place in the club. Roy Hodgson always says that his best time managing was at Inter Milan, where he would turn up one day and Lothar Matthäus was presented to him, and they go, just coach him. And he goes, that's great. So managers do work under this. So what's Tommy McIntyre's job is to develop first team players. Where they come from, I don't think it's going to matter to Tommy McIntyre.
Sorry, Kev, I was going to say, when you look at it then, if that is the case, what is the target for the Colts this season? Is it to develop players, or is it actually to be competitive in that Lowland League?
I'll answer that. For me, it's to develop guys for the first team squad. Brian, what do you think?
Well, I think one follows the other. I mean, if you're developing players for the first team squad, they should be good enough to win the Lowland League. So, I think one follows. They can't finish mid-table in the Lowland League and be considered developed first team players. So I think one follows the other, probably. I think his aim would be make sure these guys are ready to slip into the first team. These are the guys who identified, these are the guys who they might cut loose so they don't succeed. But yeah, success follows development, surely. I
remember Paul will probably come into this, and I'm not a friend of the star like Paul, as he keeps on saying. I remember Martin O'Neill telling Willie McStay, it was Willie McStay told us this story. Martin O'Neill says, I'm not interested in players that are bubbling at the surface. I want guys who are ready. Only come and speak to me when you've got somebody that can walk into my first team dressing room. Do you think Postecoglou will be the same, Colin?
I mean, that would be ideal if he was. Are we in that position right now, though?
No.
Are we in that position where you can afford to not even bring in someone and give them a chance? I mean, we spoke about the size of this rebuild. At the minute, if you do sign Starfelt, you're looking at Julian coming back from injury, Starfelt, Ayer looks as if he's out the door, and Welsh. So you're really sitting with 3 kind of recognised centre-halves at the club. So if someone comes in and says, well, we're able to get a Ben Davies from Liverpool on loan for a season, regardless of whether he's going to come into the first team or not, he's got that experience. You're going to bring him in because you need to have the strength and depth as well. You can't go into this season with 3 recognised centre-halves. So there's probably not to the point where you can go, right, I only want him if he's better than my best player. And probably at the minute you'd say your best centre-half's Chris Julian. So we can't afford to be in that situation. Maybe in a couple of years' time when you get back to the strength and depth of squad that you've seen in the Invincible season, where guys that you've been linked with, you're going, well, who's he actually going to replace in that team? But at the minute, we're just not there.
We're a long way off when you look at the downsizing and the managed decline, which I think is the term that people are using, that's happened in the last 4 years of the squad. It's got us into this situation. I mean, we're in this situation now. And do you think the Celtic media team, Brian, are also creating a goodbye video for Christopher Ayer now that it looks like they're creating a welcome video for Carl Starfelt. Have the club now received a bid from an English Premier League side or a European side for Christopher Ayer, which means that they're starting pressing the button on these deals because there's money going to be coming in?
Aye, one of the things I said before, we'll talk about the length of time it's taken to get players in, and I suggested, given the financial implications and the kind of the economics of the club now, I thought we were going to wait and just see how much money was available to spend. So I think that I saw someone on Twitter earlier that was saying, are we holding on to these players in case we don't get someone else in? I don't think it's that, but I think what we're doing is wait and see how much money we actually get in before we start sanctioning moves for players, so that there's enough money there to spread about. The reality is we don't know. The media team's been, well, I don't know if the media team's been good or Don Mackay's been good, but the communication's been fairly well so far, and I hope that these questions can get answered next time fan media at a conference. But yeah, I'm of the opinion that they're waiting to see how much money they're going to allow them to spend. I think they've got in mind, if we sell A, B and C, we can get this amount of money. If we get that, we'll release the funds for these players you want. And I think that's the delay. Is it the best idea? I don't think so. Is it the most ambitious? No. But is it the most prudent? Probably. And I think, given, as we've touched on, what I think is a slight downsizing, I think that's probably what's happening.
Brown Warrior on YouTube says Dermot Desmond could build a squad good enough for the Europa final with a percentage of his vast wealth. At what point is he going to step up and start helping financially at Celtic, interest-free loans? Colin, what do you think of that?
Hold on, I get my Gordon DL hat on.
Go Gordon for your cupboard.
Look, he's not. He's just not. That is the harsh reality of it. I think if it gets to desperation stages and his investment is in danger, then yeah, he will. But apart from that, I don't think he's ever going to be a kind of guy that's going to dip in and give you 40-50 million pound to go and spend on someone, because it doesn't make sense for him. He's very business orientated. He is a fan, but he's not someone like who's going to throw 100 million at the team and say, "Oh, don't worry about it." He's going to want some sort of return on his investment, so we're not going to see that. And I think if anybody's expecting that, they've not really been following Celtic close enough for the last sort of 15, 20 years. That's just not the way that we're going. As frustrating as it is, but he is only one of, 3 or 4 major investors at the club, but because he's so known to Celtic fans, then he's the person that everybody hopes that they can turn to. He doesn't own the club. He owns about a quarter of the club, I think, if you look at his shareholding. So he'll probably say, well, why do I need to? Why am I the guy that you keep turning to? So,
Brian, are you shouting for Dermot Desmond to put his hands in his very, very deep pockets and bring out some cash?
No, not particularly. I think we spoke a lot about the culture of the club, and I think that what I don't want is for Celtic to become part of the City Group, where we've got all this money to our source and we're just buying out with our means. We're not bringing players through. I just don't see that ever happening. I don't want that to happen. I don't want one man to be in charge of our success or failure. I think if you're, he's a frustrating figure, but I think if you've been fair to him, he's probably putting a lot more than he's ever got out, if we're honest. I mean, you can't be part of a club in Scotland and make an insane profit on stuff. So I think he's probably putting either just as much as he's got out or very little more. So I think I'm not going to hang out to dry and say he should be doing more. I think he's done a lot. One of the things, just thought to my head while talking there, there's been so much talk about Ange and Dom and the structure change and stuff. See, to be honest, maybe it's our youth set up from bottom to top. Maybe that whole thing needs revamped. Tommy McIntyre's been there for years. Stevie Woods has been there for years, goalkeeping coach. Obviously, Kennedy was there for maybe Daniel Day, Stephen McManus. Maybe we need to talk clear of these guys and actually who's a sort of youth development expert, put them in charge of the development, and as you say, feed them to Postecoglou, and that's his first options, second option to buy someone. Because I think maybe we're looking in the wrong direction actually, and saying, why these guys don't come through, the manager's not playing them. Well, maybe they're not good enough. If they're not good enough, we're not getting scouted well enough, or they're not getting trained well enough. So maybe that's something to change first. Success.
I might be wrong here, but the vibe I'm getting in this room at this precise moment in time is we're looking long term. We are looking long term, and I think we've kind of, would I be correct in saying that we know that next week's too quick? Colin, do you think am I right in saying that we know that next week's too quick? Next month might be too quick. 6 months down the line might be too quick, and we might just need to put up with it.
It depends what your expectations are. Is that Celtic team good enough to beat Midtjylland over 2 legs? If everybody plays at their best, then they should still be enough to beat Midtjylland. I mean, you're looking at guys like you still could have Edward in the team. Ayeti's been playing well in pre-season. Ayer's not moved yet. Barkas he's given a second chance. But you look at the midfielder, McGregor, Sorrow, Turnbull, there should still be enough there to give them a good game, and you should have a good chance against them.
I thought you were going to say that Barkas was playing in the centre midfield, but I'm sure we'll talk about that.
I mean, it did look as if he was the other day. He was as high up.
Barkas has been given his chance in centre midfield. That's what I thought you were going to say there.
Hey, I tell you what, he was playing in that position. Was it against Sheffield Wednesday? Was it Sheffield Wednesday or the Charlton game?
No, Charlton.
The Charlton game. He was playing the Davy Marshall role about 45 yards from his goal.
It's as you say, if they players are fully invested though, and what's in front of them next week, we do have a decent enough squad, but I still think there's too many unanswered questions. We're trying to implement a brand new style, which has been fairly obvious when we've watched the 2 pre-season kickabouts that we've already watched. There's a complete change of style. The game against Charlton, there was a moment down in the left back area when Greg Taylor and Adam Montgomery were trying to play the ball out, and you could see the fear in Greg Taylor's eyes that he wanted to boot this ball up the park and not try to pass it. You could probably hear the ghosts of every single football coach shouting at him, clear it, and he's gone, no, pass it, I need to pass it back to the goalie, this is what I'm doing. And I mean, it's going to be heart attack football next season. It is going to be heart attack football. It's like a kebab, absolutely great to eat, but you can it could give you a heart attack at any point. Eh? What's been? We'll move on to the pre-season. What's been your thoughts so far? I ken these games are kickabouts and they're just to get fitness and legs time and just to get guys up to fitness and stuff like that. Brian, what's your thoughts on seeing the style of Postecoglou?
I've actually been quite impressed. I think they seem to have took quick. I've been impressed with the youngsters. I think Moffat and Dembele have shown up really well. I think the Montgomery played well as well. What I liked about him was any time he lost the ball, he immediately get it back. You can see there's a buy into that idea. I think Sorrell is ideal for that type. I think he's going to really flourish this season. So I've been quite impressed. I think Shaw as well. I think he's shown up really well. So it looks like the youngsters in particular have sort of took on board the very early development stuff that Fifty Postecoglou, and it's came up well. Obviously, there's defensive concerns just because it does look a wee bit gung-ho at times. And as you touched on, Barkas doing overlaps by Sorrell probably wasn't ideal for your keeper. But I think pre-season's been good. I think tonight will be interesting. And then I think is it Preston next, and then Mitchell.
Yeah, Preston on Saturday. Yeah.
Bristol City today.
I think the Preston game's going to be a real indicative view of how we're going to line up against Midtjylland. I think tonight's an experimental side again. But what I've liked I say, look, we're judging this on 2 games. We can only judge what we saw. But I think they've played well. I think the system's quite clear. I think they've took it quite quick. I really like it. I think the fears I had of them breaking down a low block, they seem to have done. It seems just like a complete overload of bodies and passing. But we do look very, very vulnerable to a counter-attack. Although I will say, lastly, set pieces will look a wee bit tighter actually. We've not conceded a goal yet, which is a minor miracle for a Celtic team. Maybe it's because Ayer's not been playing. Maybe that's how somebody's running a ball in the air. But we've looked good.
Before I move to Colin, Billy Reed's commented on YouTube, and this is aimed at me here, and I'll bring it up. He says you had him as captain, Kev. So he's talking about me saying Greg Taylor was Celtic captain material last season. Well, he had the fear in his eyes, but once he learns how to play the Postecoglou way, I think Greg Taylor will be a decent addition to Postecoglou's side. Colin, what's your thoughts on pre-season? I'm doubling down on that. I'm doing voice. I'm doubling down on my Greg Taylor prediction there. What do you think, Colin?
I need to disagree with Brian. I think Sorrow's been really poor so far. I've not been impressed with Sorrow at all. I don't know what it is. I don't know if he's just a couple of weeks behind everyone else, but I mean, passing's been slack. He's been conceding quite a few fouls. I don't know if he's just not up to speed yet. We've seen what he can do, but I haven't been impressed with him. Shaw, I have been impressed with in the middle of the park. He's someone that looks very commanding on the ball. Seems to sort of, when I say commanding, it's not just the passing, it's the sort of always making himself available. It's been strong in the tackle, and he does look like someone who you'll be able to rely upon if you're trying to see a game out. And it's maybe 1 or 2-0 and you try to see it out, throw him on for the last 20 minutes sort of thing. He's been impressive. Again, defensively, there's been some decent performances from like some Montgomery at left back. He was better, I think, when he moved up to the left attacking position, which is his more natural position. Mm-hmm. Again, Dane Murray at centre half hasn't done himself any harm. Him moving into that position helped as well. Welsh has actually looked pretty decent in those games too. Right back's still a massive concern for me. I know we put Ralston in there, we put Uragidi in there, and that was worse. The best right back performance I've seen so far, the three's probably been Leo Connor in his 30-minute spell that he had. Look, up front, we're looking fairly decent. Edward knows where the back of the net is. Yet he's starting to find it again. And Karamoko Dembele played very well in his 45 minutes. So middle to front's not too bad. I think the concern is still at the back, and that's why you're seeing a lot of the targets that we're going for is sort of defenders, and who knows, maybe next up we'll see a goalkeeper being linked with us.
Somebody's got a text. This is no Love Island. Switch off your phones. Come on. We've got a WhatsApp group, right? And we all know Colin doesn't really like Tony Ralston. Tony Ralston is this year's Ryan Christie for Colin. And I think if you're looking at the three right backs that we've got at the moment, Leo Connor has only played 30 minutes. He might get a game tonight. Uragide, I've seen more mobility in a combi boiler than his performance on Saturday. But it's the guy's first game. He was playing at right back. Postecoglou has came out and says that he is a centre half. That's what he looks like. But you look at Ralston. Ralston set up the goal for Ayeti.
It was a great cross,
That was a great cross. He linked up well with Dembele, and to back up what was says in the WhatsApp group, he's got European experience, whether we like it or lump it, and that's what could be needed next week against the Danes. So I think Tony Ralston's a shoo-in to play right back, unless we sign a domestic right back. It doesn't need to quarantine before tomorrow night. So, Brian, Colin, what do you think? Colin?
He's probably going to play.
Defend. Give me a case for Leo Connor playing right back. Come on.
I'm probably not going to say anything different from what I've already said to you guys before. He's not got the European experience. He does have international experience playing for Ireland. His cap that he's got there, plus his under-21 experience. I know there's going to be comments coming in and saying, well, Ireland's worse than Scotland at the minute, but hey, at least he's not Stephen O'Donnell. That deserves to get picked up. Well, on you go, carry on. No, but look, I think we spoke earlier about the idea of giving the sort of youth a chance and having that balance of youth and experience. Ralston is 22 now? 21, 22 now. So he was thrown in at the sort of deep end against PSG when he was a 17, 18-year-old. And he seemed to impress, although we get kind of gubbed that night. The more that he didn't play, the more people were clamouring for him to come in and play at right back. Like you said, some loan experience out at St Johnstone, Dundee United. That's probably his level. I don't think Ralston's ever going to be the person that you turn to as a Celtic right back, and as you can see, we're already trying to sign players in that position. And if you're looking at that Ren team, I'd take both Soppy and Bowie if that's available to us, because it does look as if they're trying to move both of them on. O'Connor, for me, I just think he's someone that is a more attacking option. He suits the style that Ange wants to play. I know Ralston came in with that assist the other day, but he's not somebody who's natural at going forward. If you're looking for somebody that's going to offer the more defensive sort of stability in there, you probably go with Ralston. But if you're going out to try and play Ange ball, then I think O'Connor's your shout at right back.
O'Connor's your shout at right back. Brian, who's your shout at right back?
For tonight's game or for the Michelin?
Michelin. Aye, just in general, until if we're going to sign if we say we're kicking off against, just for the next couple of weeks, who's your choice right back?
I would probably say O'Connor. I think his quality, I think he suits the way Postecoglou plays. Not saying enough of him, but I'd be interested to see more. I don't really. Ross is one of those guys that I don't particularly dislike. I was confident to play more last year because I thought I think he's better than Kenny when he was there. I don't think he certainly wasn't any worse. I think he's a bang average player. I don't think he's a bad player. But what I would say is I don't think he's fits into Postecoglou's system at all. I think he's a decent crosser of the ball, but I don't think he's quite got the mobility or the sharpness of passing, or that sort of ability drifting in and out. Because if you look at the way Postecoglou's fullbacks have been, they've almost been coming into centre mid and letting centre mids drift out and overlap the wingers. It's been a kind of really fluid system, and I think you need to have more about you as an attacking player at fullback for Postecoglou. So I don't really get the Ralston hate, because I just think he's average player that is playing probably above his level, but I don't think he's terrible. But would I start him? No. It'd be a corner for the moment. I think Urigidi shouldn't have been here right back again in his life. He was putting in the Gary Caldwell at right back. He said Gary Caldwell was decent.
He reminded me of Tyler Blackett. And
that still gives me nightmares.
That's what he reminded me of, and I wanted to blank him out my mind.
Do you remember that game up at Pittodrie?
No, remember the game at Hamilton.
Pittodrie was worse. Pittodrie looked as if he'd never seen a football before in his life.
It was like that at Hamilton. Friday night at Hamilton, when I can't even remember the score under Ronnie Dyler. Boyata got sent off that night, and he looked as if he had never been anywhere like Hamilton in his life. And the big fella up front for Hamilton, I can't remember his name, went through him, and you could just see him looking at the referee. Obviously, this like causated Man United player, and this big journeyman centre forward just goes through him. The referee waves play on, and you could just see him looking as if to go, what is going on here? And he just never settled after that. He played in the Europa League for us as well as fullback against Ajax and stuff like that. For me, I agree with you long term about Ralston. I've spoke to guys who are Dundee United and St Johnstone fans, and the Dundee United fans think he'd be great for them. The St Johnstone fan goes, they never really done enough for us to actually say we would take him back in a heartbeat. And I think that says it all. Longer term. Short term, I would bite your hand off for a Stephen O'Donnell just now to be in that squad to be able to play in the next 10 days. I would bite your hand off for that. But longer term, it's a position that we've got to look at. I never really saw much of the Sheffield Wednesday game, but I did see all of the Charlton game. And I was impressed with Montgomery. I thought Montgomery was really good against Charlton Athletic, and he stood out he really did stand out in that first half when we were impressive in that first half. And that's a guy who he played at left back last couple of games last season. I think he could be I'm mulling him to be the breakout star. I'm mulling him because I think there's a place in the squad for him. What do you think?
What position?
Left attacker. I don't think it left back. I
think given a lack of width, I think what did you see? He's 18 now, isn't he? 18. I don't see a reason why he can't be in. We're so short on wingers anyway. Even if we sign another winger, you've only then got Johnson and say Abby comes in. So there's no reason for it to not have him. I don't think he's done anything wrong. I think he's looked bright. I think he's a guy you can bring on, 20 minutes into a game, or if we are dominating games, you can start to bring him on if we're in a good place. So I agree with his both. I don't think he's a left back. I think he started out as a striker, did he not? So I think
Montgomery, he was a forward. Aye.
So he's got that attacking flair. Can I just picture on Stephen O'Donnell quickly? So first of all, I wouldn't have him anywhere near Celtic, just an FYI. However, he'll also have a place in my heart because I think he's still got Jack Grealish in his pocket. So big shout out for Stephen O'Donnell, but no for Celtic.
Now, I'm seeing some folk in the comments who thought I was shouting for Stephen O'Donnell to be signed. I wasn't. What I actually says was somebody like Stephen O'Donnell in the squad now would be great. That's what I says. I didn't say that we should go out and offer him 15 grand a week because he is out of contract, obviously.
See, to be honest, Kevin, see if you can get Starfelt in for the second leg and Ayer's still there. Your best right back's Ayer. That's who you'd go with the second leg.
You're right there. Ayer is our best right back, but he might not even be there for the first leg.
No, and I don't fancy a centre half pairing of Welsh and Beaton. No, thank you.
Aye, well, that's what it looks like it is going to happen. I mean, what about the big guy Shaw in the middle of the park? I didn't realise he was as tall as what he actually is. And he puts himself about. It's something different that we haven't had for a number of years in the first 75 minutes that we've seen him, Brian? Well, I think so anyway. So
I know, I agree. I really liked him. I was really surprised at how much he got forward, actually. I thought he was like a sitting midfielder that could drop into centre back, but he looked like he was a bit more box to box. He was, good feet for a big man, is the old football cliche. I think he looked like a real good big presence in the middle of the park. Certainly not going to be bullied off the ball. I think he's 6'5" or something like that. Like a unit. He put me in mind a wee bit, and I might get slaughtered for this. But remember the way Charlie McGrew was when he was in centre mid for Celtic, and that he had that big kind of presence. And
is that meant to be a compliment?
Well, just in terms of the physical, I like that. I thought Big Charlie's all right, but just in terms of the physicality, it's something we've not had since then. Because I think the last physical player we really had in centre mid was probably Wanyama. If I'm honest, I think, because if you look at Forrest, Scorrell, McGregor, they're what, 5'8", 5'9" at the most. They're not big, powerful guys. So it's good to have that addition. So I'm quite excited about them for the season.
Colin?
Aye, I mentioned earlier, I really thought that Shaw was one of the best performers over the last couple of games. He's someone who's settled very well into the sort of setup that Postecoglou wants to play. Just on that, you're already seeing the sort of football Postecoglou wants to play. You mentioned it earlier with Greg Taylor trying to play the ball out, but see the high press and the closing down, it's worked really well so far. I know it's only pre-season, but if you can get that into a competitive game, I'm getting vibes of the sort of Ronnie Dyler Celtic against Dundee United. Do you remember that game? 6-0 at Celtic Park. Berge get 2 goals. But they're closing down. I think Johansson stole the ball from someone 25 yards out from goal, and it led to, I think, the third or fourth goal. And if he's going, that's just the style of football we want to play. If you can get the players to play that style of football, it will be exciting football to watch. And if Shaw's part of that, then he's earned it, because these pre-season games are the chance for you to stake your claim for that jersey, and so far he's done nothing wrong.
I mean, why we see the pre-season games as a chance to make rash decisions, which we can't back down on, especially when you're doing a live broadcast. So that's why Greg Taylor's always going to be Captain Greg Taylor to me. As Billy Reid in the comments just won't let it go, So I'm going to just to annoy Billy Reid, I'm just going to call him Captain Greg Taylor all the time now. So we make rash decisions, but there'll be scientific decisions getting made by the coaching staff watching these games. And there'll be stuff that we don't understand, that there'll be metrics that we didn't understand. Well, I won't understand that they're taking into account when they're evaluating these boys. Because whether we like it or lump it, every one of these players has got a blank slate under this new manager. And maybe, yes, Gavin Stratton and John Kennedy will have, say, give Postecoglou a bit of background to the player, but Postecoglou does seem like the type of fella that will make up his own mind whether this player is going to fit into Postecoglou's way. Now, Michael the boy on Periscopes, and this is a question for, I'll give it to Brian first actually. Michael the boy on Periscope says, I'd play Montgomery before Mikey Johnson. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agreed. I think that the amount of space that wide players are getting under this new system, or it looks like they're going to get under this new system, a guy like Montgomery will thrive on. I think I'm not as adverse to Michael Johnson as some. I think there's still a player there. I don't think he should be better than he is, but I think Montgomery's harder working, and I think you saw a real good attitude for him. And I think sometimes, and this is maybe going to get jumped on, but I think sometimes I would pick a player with a better attitude before I would pick a player with better ability, depending on the position. And I think the young, hungry guys, playing into that system well, as I say, a few times he lost the ball, Montgomery, but he was straight to win it back. He was all over the park. So yeah, I would start him before I would start. What do you call him? Sorry, Michael Johnson. But then again, I would go rogue, and I would maybe, if Forrest isn't quite fit enough yet, I don't know if he's an issue. If he wasn't fit, I would start Moffat on the other hand as well. Give him a chance, because I just feel like they've got such energy and desire at this stage, and they seem to take it on well. Why not give them a chance?
Colin, what's your thoughts on Mikey Johnson? He kind of split opinion in the ACSOM camp after his cameo, after his performance against Charlton Athletic, whereas I like seeing wingers taking on guys and going with his dancing feet and stuff like that, but there was a couple of times where his final decision wasn't there. But again, it's his first pre-season game. He's only had 2 weeks under Postecoglou. I think there's ability there that you can get a player out of. But I can understand why there's division within the camp. What do you think? Where do you sit?
Brian, I'm going to start this by saying I don't always disagree with you, but I'm going to disagree with you again. It's a reoccurring theme today. I honestly think Mikey Johnson is someone who's had his development stunted over the last couple of seasons because of coaching and because of injuries. I mean, you saw the reaction that he got that time he got taken off against St Johnstone. If you're a young player and that's what your gaffer's saying to you, it's hardly the encouraging arm round the shoulder that some of these boys need. But I was impressed with his performance against Charlton. I think he was very unlucky with the one that came back off the post. And as you said, Kev, he's someone who likes to take on a player. He's definitely got bags of tricks. You've seen from the performances he had probably about 2 years ago what he can do when he comes into the side. He's going to be a handful for players if you can get him fully fit. Again, I think he's someone who should be given a fresh slate under Postecoglou and given that second chance. All you have to think back to is think of the amount of people that wanted to get rid of James Forrest before Brendan Rodgers came in, and the transformation that someone can do and how much he can offer to that side. I'm not saying Johnson can go on to that level, but if you can get anything near that, he's a massive asset to this squad.
It would be, Noel Doran comes in and says on YouTube and says 3 young wingers looking good: Moffat, Montgomery and Dembele. A chance one of these youngsters, Moff, could push Forrest onto the left. What do you think of that?
If you're going to try and fit Dembele and Forrest into the team, then you'd think Forrest could play on the left, but I don't think you take your most effective player and put him out of position. I think that's a massive sort of no-no. You can't do that. The other thing with Dembele is he looks very comfortable playing through the middle as well. So it might be that he's not necessarily a natural winger. He might kind of play in the role behind the striker. Again, it limits his opportunities with guys like Rogic and Turnbull that can also play in there too. But look, we do want to get to a position where the squad is deep. I mean, if you're playing as a winger, the amount of injuries you're going to pick up playing in those positions, because if you're a tricky kind of player, they've got 2 on you, they've got 3 on you, they're throwing the wild tackles in there, and we've seen the kind of injury history that we've had in those positions. So having the strength and depth isn't necessarily a bad thing, and also it means that it encourages the player that's got the jersey to play well to keep it. So the kind of competition for places is going to be massive too, and for that, you're kind of thinking just play Forrest in his natural position and then develop someone who's going to play on the left. Montgomery's that player at the minute because they've got no one else.
Brian?
Here's my turn to disagree with you, Colin.
This is brilliant, man. I love this.
I think if you look at the way he plays like a 4-3-3. So if Forrest is playing as a sort of almost wide right striker, he's probably better on the left because then he can cut in and shoot with his right. And if you look at the way that they've rotated positions, I don't think it's that much of an issue for the players. Because, I mean, you look at the amount of times that your wingers were actually inside, it's almost your two strikers, and your striker was dropping deep. So I don't think there's as much of a... I don't think Forrest has to play on the right, and you have to develop a player for the left. I don't think, again, I touched on it earlier, I think we don't have a lot of time to develop players. So I think if you've got Reid and Bailey ready to start, Forrest can play left. And again, they're not really traditional wingers in the Postecoglou, by the looks of it. They're almost like second strikers. So I think because they're going to be coming in and overlapping, I don't think any of the wingers actually made that many crosses in the 2 pre-seasons. I could be widely wrong, and I don't want to call in what fan club to kick my head in, but
I think that's a very low membership there, mate. You're all right.
Still 2 against 1, isn't it?
Follower Celtic comes in, Brian says, Colin talking nonsense.
Told you it's a very small fan club.
Mikey Johnson is an underdeveloped Karamoko Dembele. So there's somebody in your camp there, Brian, eh?
We've levelled it up, mate. I tell you what,
I'm getting abuse for being a Tyrone, whatever a Tyrone is.
I have no idea. I've seen that as well. I tell you what, see somebody that would have absolutely suited this style of formation, and he's not going to be as good because of his age as somebody we're going to see on Saturday. Scott Sinclair. Scott Sinclair would have been ideal in this formation. And see, when you were just mentioning there about players cutting in, that was the Scott Sinclair move.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? So if you could sign someone like that, yes, there we go. We're all pals again.
So we sort of wind up. That's has been on an hour, and we haven't spoke about half the stuff that we were going to speak about, which is absolutely magic. Everybody, we've got a game against Bristol City tonight, and there's going to be a pre-match, a half-time, and a post-match. I think you're on it, Brian, tonight, eh? And I'm actually looking forward tonight. I just want a one-sentence answer here. Tonight, I'm looking forward to seeing Bolly Golly trying to play the ball out for the back. I'm looking forward to that. Colin, what are you looking forward to tonight?
I am looking forward to Ayeti continuing his goal-scoring spree, and that's me jinxed him now.
Good. Brian, what are you looking forward to tonight?
I look forward to seeing Wee Moffat come up with another goal.
Good. Now, we're only a couple of subscribers away from 12,000. One subscriber away from 12,700. So we want you all to tell your friends to subscribe. If you subscribe, you're going to go into a prize draw for a fabulous prize, a prize that I want and I can't enter, and I'm really, really disappointed about that. And it's a photo of the Verve of. What is it? It's to commemorate the Verve selling 2.1 million albums of urban hymns, and it was given to them by the record industry. Now, this is a one-off prize, and it's worth. I would actually hang it up in the living room. It would probably get me a divorce right enough if I tried to put it up in the living room, but I would put it up in the living room. So everybody subscribe and get put into this draw. It's going to be a monthly draw, and at the moment we've got loads of great individual prizes. So please subscribe. If you subscribe, you're automatically put into this draw for the Verve prize and also for all the prizes going forward. We want to drive the subscribers up. And just look, if you enjoy it, leave a comment, subscribe, tell your pals, invite them on, join in the chat. I've only got one thing to say, lads. Thank you very much for joining me on this Wednesday afternoon. Oh, Helen McCallum comes in and says 12.7 thousand subscribers now. So there we go. Well done, everybody. Hopefully we can get up to 13,000 by the end of July. I've just unsubscribed. Oh, thank you, Tommy Daniel. Thank you very much. All it's saying to me, all I've got to say is thanks everybody for listening. Have a great afternoon. Hopefully Celtic give us something to talk about the night, and be kind to yourself and be kind to everybody else. See you later.